in Scranton, Pennsylvania right now, heading to the facility in New York State. On I-81 northbound. Question is, will I have to sit on this load for 9 days? Well, I will find out. I don't think that's going to happen. I think the guy was BSing me, but we'll see. But the reason why I didn't make it was already 9 p.m. and I was just getting into Scranton, PA. My time was about expired. I had 10 minutes left on my 11 hours for the day, and I was only in Scranton, Pennsylvania. So I said, I'm not going that much over on my time for anybody. So I got off at the exit for the parking, and there's a traffic circle. It's so dark. I ended up getting back on the highway instead of going toward the parking area. And I ended up going over on my time. I had to go further up, turn around, go back. It's a very tricky traffic circle where you have to go all the way around it almost to get to the turn. The road that will take you to the parking. There were like 3 or 4 traffic circles that you had to go through to get to this parking area. And at nighttime especially, it wasn't lit up. It was extremely tricky to go through there. I finally got in there. They had a nice restaurant there. At least they had sit-down eating there open. So I was able to have a nice meal once I got done. But now I'm faced with what's going to happen here. What I'm going to talk more about today is what are the long-term implications of this tropical weather season, where I believe that it was an artificially induced season, meaning most of the hurricanes we got this season were artificially interfered with storms that normally on their own likely would not have been hurricanes, meaning we should have had this year a hurricane-free season. Of course, they have developed technology because hurricanes have been overall on the decrease since 2005. They have developed technology to artificially induce tropical waves to become hurricanes by shooting energy into these systems to intensify them. I believe that is going on. I believe this hurricane season, left to its own devices, would have been a very quiet season. Yeah, there would have been a lot of rainfall, there would have been a lot of tropical waves moving through, but none of them would have really developed into anything significant without interference. And they will not have any of that because it doesn't fit their agenda of global warming. See, we're in the opposite right now. Climate is changing, but it is cooling, not warming. down here in Scranton, Pennsylvania, the leaves are already turning color. It's not even October yet. The leaves, probably in a week or two, are going to be peak color here, and that's very early. But what are the long-term implications going to be of this interference? See, hurricanes are out there to help keep the balance of the heat balance for the earth. When the heat goes on overload, we get hurricanes that transport this heat up toward the poles where it's released out into space. So if we're not getting many hurricanes, it means there's not as much heat to transport. So what happens now when they artificially induce hurricanes out of storms that should not have really been hurricanes? Well, what happens? Well, you're going to have the same amount of heat getting taken out of the oceans. But what happens if the oceans are not as warm and you're taking the same amount of heat as before out of them? Well, they're going to get even colder. The water is going to, the cooling of the oceans is going to be accelerated because you're having extra heat taken out by artificially inducing these storms into hurricanes when they should not have been. It's taking extra heat out of the oceans, out of the heat budget of the earth, and it's being lost to space. And so in the long term, the effects of doing this is going to accelerate the cooling of the planet. Because excess heat is being removed from the oceans by artificially intensifying these storms. They're taking excess heat out of the system that shouldn't normally be removed. So it's going to bite them in the you-know-what, because the cooling of the planet is going to be accelerated in the long run by what they're doing. Going to lead to unforeseen consequences on our climate if they continue with this. The climate is cooling, but the cooling is going to be accelerated by what they're doing in the long run, because the oceans are going to lose their heat a lot faster. You see, these hurricanes take the heat out of the top layers of the oceans and transport it out of the system. It's a massive energy machine that takes the heat out of the oceans and removes it. So they artificially induce these hurricanes. That means excess amount of heat is being removed from the oceans that shouldn't. It's going to upset the balance of our climate and tip it toward accelerated cooling with perhaps very bad consequences. This is a very tricky intersection. You have to go up a hill like this and try to get over to the left. If you look closely, you can see the trees are all turning color already. And it's only September 24th. So, for example, they were calling this storm a hurricane that hit Nova Scotia. It was a bomb cyclone that developed on the contrast of some very chilly air over the eastern Canada and the U.S. and warmer air to the east. This storm formed on a front. It was a clash of air masses. It was not a hurricane at all. It was a hurricane till it got past Bermuda, and then it morphed. Once it collided with that cold front, it morphed into a bomb cyclone. Sure, it did give Nova Scotia and eastern Canada a lashing of wind and rain, but that's what a bomb cyclone does. It hits eastern Canada, normally even in the wintertime. It will bring a clash of air masses, heavy precipitation, wind, gale force winds, and that's what they got. This was not a hurricane. This was a low pressure system that bombed out due to a clash of air masses. Weather system off Portugal, same thing. It's a low pressure system forming way south for late September, way south because the jet stream is diving way south in that region. It's forming on the jet stream. This system has nothing to do with the tropics, but they named it as a tropic, and they even named it Paulette. Paulette disintegrated a long time ago, and they were trying to say that it's the same system that was Paulette in the past, and that's ridiculous. It was not at all that system. So now they're saying, oh, it's the first subtropical storm on record to hit Portugal, going on and on with that narrative. And the reason why I get this way about it is because mankind is faced with a much more serious problem with climate change that has to do with global cooling, failed harvests, food shortages potentially on the horizon. Of course, the California governor is blaming all this on global warming, and that's easy to. As I said before, I think the fires were deliberately set to promote this narrative. And I predicted that the next thing was going to be, you were going to never hear the end of it, that this is going to be the new normal. Every year we're going to have these kinds of fires. And to promote an agenda and get legislation, ridiculous legislation passed that makes no sense at all. Like he passed legislation to outlaw emissions in California by, I think it was like by 2035. And the guy has drunk the Kool-Aid on global warming. He has drank the Kool-Aid, apparently, and many have. So that's going to be it for this discussion. I'm heading for delivery. We'll see if they accept me or not. I'm not going to loosely burger it. My philosophy is whatever happens, happens. The APU generator is not starting, so it has to go back in the shop. For that, to get the oil changed in it and figure out, and hopefully that's all it is that it needs. But I haven't needed it much lately because the weather has been cooler. I don't need the AC at night anymore much. So I don't really have to run the APU generator much if it's not too hot out. But yeah, I gotta get it in before the cooler weather hits, and I need to eat. And yeah, I'm gonna need it running again. These people just are not letting me through here. Then the oil has to be changed on the truck as well. It seems like this truck has seen the shop the past 2 or 3 months, more than I've driven it almost. So I'm hoping this is the last of it for a while. 64 miles to Milford, Pennsylvania, which is on the New York state line. Probably about another 25, 30 miles beyond there to my delivery. That is going to be it for this video. I will be back soon.